Hello, this is Craig from bitsbox.co.uk. In this video I'm going to show you how to make a cheap and easy wet palette, and we'll go over some advantages of using a wet palette, and we'll compare it to one that you can actually buy as well. So I'm just going to go jump straight into it. So we're going to be on the desk behind me. So let's begin. Okay, so I hope this is a good enough angle to work with. We are very pushed for space in here. So first of all, I will show you how I make a very cheap and easy wet palette. So we only need three things for this. The first one is an old like takeaway container, any sort of little Tupperware. You don't have to have something with a lid, but there are benefits to having something with a lid, and we'll go through that. I apologise as always that my chair's a bit squeaky. I really must get that sorted. But yeah, I like to have one with a lid. That way you can close your paint up in there, and that will actually stay wet for some time. Also, some paper towel or sponge. So I'm going to go into why I prefer paper towel over a sponge. Obviously a sponge would cost a little bit more to buy, but that's not really much of an issue, because even if you buy a sponge, it still works out quite cheap. But with sponges, you do need to just wash them regularly, whereas this you can just throw away and get another piece. Of course, it's just only paper towel. Also, this absorbs the water just a little bit better than a sponge. Obviously, you can saturate this a lot easier than a sponge. Sometimes I find you don't get enough water coming out of a sponge when you're using a wet palette. So paper towel is certainly preferred for myself. And if you don't wash your sponge out after a while, the water will sort of go stagnant, and it will really smell. With this, you know, it'll probably still happen with this, but I normally just throw them away once I've done using them anyway. Also, having a see-through container helps, because if you do leave your paint on a wet palette and you just leave it and forget about it, that will actually start going mouldy as well. I've done that with my other wet palette, which I'll show you later on. It's not mouldy, but I'll show you the other palette. So that's two things you need, and I like to fold up. There's sort of a couple of pieces here, and I sort of just fold them up and put them in the container, like so. The other thing you need is bacon paper, bacon parchment. It's just known as bacon paper over here. Not greaseproof paper, there is a difference. Greaseproof paper doesn't work as well. Anyone who does actually bake anything will know that bacon paper is better than greaseproof paper anyway. Greaseproof paper likes to... It's not as non-stick as this stuff when it comes to bacon, and this just seems to be better for doing your wet palette. So you literally just need to cut a little bit off. Now in terms of pricing, literally we just got this tub with just a takeaway meal. You can buy these quite cheap. The paper here, this is 5 meters, and that was only £1. And the kitchen roll again was only about £1 for a big roll. So you know, we're talking about a couple of quid. For each use, you probably get loads of uses out of it. So you're talking pennies, if that, per use. So dirt cheap. Of course, some of you might be thinking, well, I could just use this lid as a palette, and that cost me nothing. And of course, you would be right. But there are advantages to using a wet palette, so I cut off a square here. And we will go over that. I'm sure a lot of you know the advantages and disadvantages, but for those who don't, I will go over them. So first thing to do is to put some water in here. I've just got one of these bottles. I'm actually going to take the lid off because we're going to need a little bit. So I'll just pour it on. Now you don't need to go overboard, just enough to really sort of saturate it, but you don't want puddles forming really. So we'll just put a little bit at the end. We're not worried too much about the ends actually. So that's nice and wet, and with the kitchen paper it's a lot easier to see when it is actually saturated than with a sponge. And this is quite a light sponge, I suppose you could see it quite well. So then we put the paper on, and actually, well, I don't know if you can see too well, but the water's seeping through the parchment paper now, which is what you want. You want a sort of a moist surface. You don't want it saturated or puddles, but you just want it just a little bit damp, like so. And that's all it is to it. I've got some paint. Got a nice green from Game Colour. And I'll just put a dollop on there. It's quite thick actually, this paint. So why should we use a wet palette over a normal palette? So one advantage of a wet palette is it keeps your paint wet. Shockingly. Your paint, I find paint dries up quite quickly on something like this, and in fact maybe if I put a little dollop down, and as I'm doing this video we'll see how long this takes to dry in comparison. So I've put some paint down now, and you can see I like that we've sort of almost got a white surface here. I always like to have my paint sort of on a light surface rather than this clear surface like that. And you can really sort of see how runny it is quite easily. So another advantage of this as well is it also almost sort of thins your paint out just a little bit. I like to put a little bit of water on my brush to thin out the paint anyway, but this will thin your paints out just a little bit as well, which is really nice. Not only will it keep your paints wet while you're using them, you can of course seal it up with the lid and they'll actually be good to use the next day. This is particularly useful if you're actually mixing colours, so let's get some purple and make a really horrible colour. This is an extra opaque from Vallejo, and we'll just mix it in with some of the green. That's actually quite a nice colour, it's making a nice little lilac. So if I want to use this custom lilac colour, then I've got it mixed in on my palette, and that will stay wet for quite some time. Easily just a few days it could stay wet. As long as you keep it sealed and airtight, that will stay nice and wet in there. So your custom mixers you can just come back to the next day, rather than having to mix out again and trying to get the same colour. Also with consistency, if you're using a lot of glazes and stuff like that, you know, you can thin out your paint to a nice glaze, and we'll do that now. We'll thin this colour out and get it really thin out to a nice sort of glaze consistency, and then you can just come back and use that in the same consistency. You can see this parchment paper has sort of just shriveled up a little bit. That's not really ideal, you do want it sort of flat really, but that could just be me just rushing on the video. You can sort of flatten it out. So that's a nice cheap way of making a wet palette, and of course it's all quite disposable. Once you're done and you don't need these paints anymore, you can just throw them away, get another bit of kitchen roll, another bit of bacon paper, and you're good to go again. And this will last me, you know, I only bought this roll today, this is a new roll, and that will just last me for a long time, years probably. The previous roll we've actually used for its sole purpose of baking stuff, so we did actually run out of that. So that's just a little custom one. There's plenty of videos online about making them, I know, but I thought I'd just do one, and I did want to just sort of go over why I'd like to do it this way rather than using the sponge method. And we can look into the sponge method, because this is a P3 wet palette, and I'm not picking on P3, I've used this wet palette quite a lot, it has served me very well. But for the price on that and how easy it is to make your own, it's not a necessary product for most people. But so what it is, it's in a black box. As I said earlier, I do prefer something see-through, because I have forgotten about this in the past, and we've had some nice stagnant mildew water with some mouldy paint in there, and it doesn't smell pleasant at all. So it comes with a black sponge. Now, as I was saying earlier, with this sponge, it is a bit harder to see when it's sort of saturated. And you can see it takes a little while for the water to soak in. So I'm pouring quite a bit in here because it's quite a big sponge. P3 also has palette paper. Of course, you can just use this stuff. This is virtually the same stuff. Again, it's not a necessity because you can just buy a massive roll for £1. I don't know how much these are, but I'm sure they were more than £1. So, but they are a handy size, and you can see quite clearly where the water from the sponge comes through. But I do really have to press it down to really get it to come through. And again, it is sort of shriveling up. And we'll come back with green. But this works exactly the same way. As I said, it served me well, but I do prefer just using my own now. And again, you thin out your paint quite nicely on the palette. These paints are quite thin anyway, and that will stay wet on there for quite some time, especially if you seal it up. If you don't seal it up and you're just using it to paint, you'll probably still get a good hour of usage out of that. In my experience, it's usually about an hour or so. I do like to thin my paints, as you know, so you get a little bit of a longer time with that. Of course, sometimes just using a regular palette when you thin your paints, that can actually make them dry out quite quick as well if you spread the paint out over a large area while it's quite thin. Obviously, that'll dry up quite quickly. So yeah, that's just a quick little video I just wanted to do just about wet palettes. I haven't used wet palettes a lot lately. I say it slowly as I try and think of the last time I used one. And when it comes to display pieces, I use them all the time. But when I'm sort of doing rank and file, I am still using just a normal palette. But I do want to try and get into the habit of using a wet palette more often. And so there'll probably be one off screen in the next painting video. And it will be this one. So yeah, by no means am I picking on P3 for this product. It's still good, it does the job, but if you're on a budget, and to be honest, even if you're not on a budget, I just don't see much point in spending a lot of money on something like this when you can do it so easily yourself. But yeah, it's a nice little product. I'm not going to forget about that and let that go all smelly like I have done in the past. So yeah, I'm just coming back to this. I don't think the video's been long enough for this paint to fully dry, but that's still wet-ish on there. Whereas obviously here it's still very wet. So we shall end it there. I hope that just gives you guys some idea on how to make a wet palette. It's really just as easy as that. So I'm going to be using this to paint some miniatures. All what's left to say is thank you so much for watching. As always, you can like and subscribe to our channel. We have a Patreon down below. We're actually going to have a Patreon giveaway. I'm giving away some Mark III Marines, and how many of them I give away will depend on how many patrons we have signing up. Even if you just do the $1 pledge, your name will be put straight into a hat for the Mark III Marines, and I'll be drawing them out towards the end of the month. So if you're interested in winning yourself some Mark III Marines, you can hop on our Patreon, and you'll get a lot of videos early, as well as the other little perks we have on there. Also, if you have enjoyed this video, I have some painting tutorials that you might also be interested in checking out. The latest ones are about painting some different skin tones for Rumbleslam miniatures. So, apart from that, all that's left to say is thank you so much for watching and for supporting our channel. I'll see you all again in the next video.